When I was 17, my family moved 2 states away without telling me. They left behind a short note that said, "You'll figure it out." 12 years later, after I had built a life completely on my own, they suddenly reached out, wanting to reconnect. I still remember coming home that day. The house was empty. No furniture. No people. Just a note sitting on the kitchen counter. It was the most painful thing I'd ever read. I didn't understand what I had done wrong. For a long time, I thought maybe they were just tired of pretending to care. Looking back, I'm not even sure they ever tried. When I was 13, I baked my mom a birthday cake by myself. She took one look at it and criticized it. At 15, I helped my brother study for his exams while he insulted me and shut me out. At 16, I handed over my entire paycheck to my dad to help with bills. Later, when I mentioned it, he told me I was useless. I was always contributing, but never truly valued. A week later, the landlord told me the truth. My family had canceled the lease early and moved away. I had 7 days to leave. I stayed with friends for a few nights, but soon ran out of options. Eventually, I slept inside a storage unit I rented with the last of my money. I showered at the YMCA, lived off cheap food, applied for jobs on library computers, and acted like everything was fine. Eventually, I got hired at a diner working night shifts. The manager was tough, but fair. She paid me in cash until I could get proper ID, and once even let me rest in the break room when I was completely exhausted. I pushed through. I bought a prepaid phone. I tracked every dollar. I watched free videos online about money, discipline, and goal setting. That first year was about survival, but I survived. Things began to change when a regular customer offered me a temporary office job. It paid much better than the diner. I took it. One opportunity led to another. I worked hard, showed up early, and kept learning. By 22, I was freelancing full-time. By 25, I started my own consulting business with almost nothing. By 27, I had a small team, an office, and clients I once only dreamed of working with. And by 29, I reached financial stability most people only talk about: no debt, real savings, and security. The day I saw those numbers in my bank account, I cried. During all those years, my family never contacted me. Not once. I saw my brother appear as a suggested friend online. He's married now, still living where they moved. I wondered if he ever mentioned me, if he said I left, or if he said nothing at all. I don't hate them. It was never hate. It was grief. I go to therapy now, not because I'm broken, but because I want to stay whole. I keep a list of people who helped me when they didn't have to. Coworkers, friends, even strangers who showed me what real support looks like. Recently, I shared my story on a podcast about surviving family separation. It went viral. My inbox filled with messages from people who felt seen for the first time. Then one email stood out. Subject line: "You're still our daughter." It was from my mom. No apology. Just a message saying she'd heard my side and wondered if we could talk. Then another message came from my brother. "We miss you. Can we fix this?" I didn't respond right away. I needed time. My therapist encouraged me to sit with my feelings and not rush. So I focused on my routine: work, gym, friends. But those messages stayed with me. My mom's email felt distant. My brother's felt more sincere. After 10 days, I replied to him with just one question. "It's been 12 years. What changed?" I hit send before I could overthink it. He replied within an hour. He said hearing my story made him finally understand what they had done. He said he was only 15 back then, that he didn't feel like he had a choice. He said he'd always thought about me, that over the years he'd searched for me online more than once, but never found the courage to reach out. He said seeing me succeed made him proud. I didn't fully believe it. If he cared that much, why wait until my success was public? I asked him directly. His next message was much longer. He admitted things weren't going well financially. His wife was expecting their second child, and medical expenses were piling up. The moment I read that, my stomach sank. There it was, the real reason. I didn't reply for another week. Then my mom sent another email, this time filled with old family photos. Me as a baby. Us at the beach when I was little. Me and Michael. Building a snowman. Happy memories that felt like they belonged to a different version of my life. At the bottom, she wrote, "We made mistakes. We want to make things right." I brought everything to my next therapy session. Melissa reminded me that I had control, that I could set boundaries, that I didn't owe anyone access to my life. She also said closure can be important, whether that means reconnecting or choosing to walk away for good. I understood her point, but emotionally I felt torn. Part of me wanted to shut the door forever. Another part wanted answers, and a small, vulnerable part still wanted their approval. I decided to meet my brother first, alone. No parents involved. We chose a coffee shop in Chicago, somewhere neutral. I flew in that morning and nearly canceled multiple times. But at 2 p.m., I walked in and recognized him instantly. He looked older, heavier, with thinning hair, but his eyes hadn't changed. He stood up when he saw me, unsure of what to do. I didn't hug him. We sat across from each other, drinks between us, like strangers. The first 20 minutes were awkward and stiff. Small talk, weather, travel. Then he apologized. "Emma, I'm really sorry," he said, his voice shaking. He told me he'd been young and scared, that he hadn't known the full plan until it was too late, that he didn't stand up for me when he should have. I studied his face, looking for cracks. He seemed genuine, but I'd learned to be cautious. I finally asked the question that had haunted me for over a decade. Why me? Why was I the one left behind? He looked down and said they always saw me as the strong one, the independent one, the one they believed would be okay on her own. They convinced themselves I didn't need them the way he did. I told him the truth, about sleeping in a storage unit, about surviving on cheap food, about showering at the YMCA and working nights at 17. His expression collapsed. He whispered that he hadn't known, that our parents told him I had a plan, that I chose to stay behind, that I was living with friends. None of it was true. By the end of the meeting, I felt conflicted. He seemed remorseful. He showed me photos of his wife and child, told me about his job, asked about my business. He never directly asked for money, which surprised me. When we said goodbye, he hugged me. I didn't return it. I just stood there, numb. Back at my hotel, I called Melissa and told her everything. She pointed out something important. While my brother expressed regret, he still framed himself as powerless rather than taking responsibility. She was right. He had been 15, not a child, old enough to reach out, old enough to check on me at any point over 12 years. That night, my mom called. I hadn't shared my number, so it had to be through Michael. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. She sounded older, fragile. She cried and told me how proud she was, how she'd always believed I'd succeed, how special I was. I let her speak. Then I asked her the same question. Why me? Her answer stopped me cold. She said they were drowning in debt, that they couldn't afford to care for everyone, that they believed I was capable enough to manage on my own, that they assumed I'd get help elsewhere, and that it would somehow be better for me. I ended the call immediately, blocked her number, threw my phone onto the bed and broke down. The next morning, I received an email from my dad, his first message in 12 years. There was no apology, just a list of struggles, debt, illness, business failures, housing issues. At the very end, he asked if I could help financially. He didn't ask how I was, didn't acknowledge the past. I forwarded the email to Melissa with one line, "This is it." She called me right away, even though it was Sunday. We talked about boundaries, forgiveness, and the difference between compassion and obligation. About what I wanted, not what guilt was pushing me toward. By Monday, I made my decision. I emailed my brother and told him I was glad we'd met, that I understood the position he'd been in back then, that I was open to a relationship with clear limits. No money, no loans, no financial involvement, and no contact with our parents unless they fully took responsibility. His reply came fast and said everything. He told me he was disappointed, that our parents needed help, that families should stick together, that I was being selfish. Every old guilt trigger surfaced at once. I didn't respond. Instead, I scheduled another therapy session and booked a trip. I needed distance. 3 days later, Michael left a voicemail apologizing for his message. He said he understood my boundaries and wanted to respect them. I listened more than once, trying to decide whether it was sincerity or desperation. I decided to give him one last chance, but I stayed cautious. I went to Bali anyway and spent 2 weeks disconnecting, walking along the beach, hiking through rice fields, meditating. I needed space to think clearly. When I got back, I had 6 emails from my dad. Each subject line sounded more urgent than the last. I didn't open a single one. I also had a message from Michael asking if we could talk again. I agreed, but only to a phone call. The conversation started calmly. He apologized again for pushing my boundaries and said he'd been thinking a lot about what I told him. He mentioned he'd started therapy too, and this time I believed him. He sounded different, less defensive. We talked about his kids, about my work. Normal conversation. Then, he casually mentioned that our parents were planning to visit him the following weekend. He asked if I'd consider meeting them. Just briefly. In public. My chest tightened. I told him I wasn't ready. He pressed a little, then backed off when I went quiet. After we hung up, I immediately called Melissa. We scheduled an emergency session that evening. She helped me realize something painful. I was scared of seeing them not because I didn't care, but because a part of me still wanted their approval. I cried for an hour. The next day, Michael texted again. He said our mom had cried all night when she heard I wouldn't meet them, that our dad was talking about driving to my city anyway. I panicked. I blocked Michael's number, told my assistant I'd be working remotely for the week, ordered groceries, stayed inside my apartment like a frightened kid. On Wednesday, the doorman called. A couple was downstairs asking for me, but refused to give their names. I knew immediately. I told him I wasn't accepting visitors. 5 minutes later, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It was my dad. He sounded angry, said they'd driven 8 hours to see me and accused me of being immature. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Thursday morning, someone started pounding on my door. I froze. My heart raced as I checked the peephole. It was them. My parents stood in the hallway like they belonged there. My mom begged through the door. My dad said they loved me and were sorry. I didn't open it. I slid down against the wall, shaking, until they eventually left. I called building security and asked them not to allow those people access again. The guard asked if I needed police involvement. I said no, just protection. Then I called Melissa. She came over during her lunch break, brought food, and sat with me while I cried. She reminded me that setting boundaries wasn't cruel, that what they were doing crossed into harassment. After she left, I got an email from Michael. He was furious, said I'd embarrassed our parents, said they were staying somewhere cheap they couldn't afford because they were desperate to see me, mentioned his wife's upcoming surgery, accused me of being heartless. I didn't respond. Friday morning, I booked a flight to Portland to stay with my friend Rachel, someone who had helped me when I was homeless years ago. I trusted her. While packing, my phone rang from another unknown number. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, the doorman called again. He said a woman downstairs appeared unwell and was asking for me by name. Claimed to be my mother. I felt sick. Told him to call emergency services if needed, but I wasn't coming down. An hour later, I left carefully. The lobby was empty. The doorman told me an ambulance had come and taken her to the hospital for chest pain. At the airport, Michael called again. Against my better judgment, I answered. He said our mom had suffered a heart attack and was in surgery. Then he blamed me. I hung up and called Melissa instead. She told me clearly I was not responsible, that this felt like another attempt to pressure me. I got on the plane. I spent the weekend with Rachel and told her everything. She remembered what I'd gone through. She was angry on my behalf and reminded me that love doesn't look like manipulation. Sunday night, my dad emailed again. My mom was stable and expected to recover. He ended with, "She wants to see you. Haven't you punished us enough?" Rachel rolled her eyes and called it exactly what it was, guilt. I flew home Monday and found flowers outside my apartment door. The note asked me to call them and said where they were staying. No apology. No respect for boundaries. I threw them away. Tuesday morning, I received a text from another unknown number. It was a photo of my mom in a hospital bed. Pale. Fragile. The message asked if I could live with the regret of not responding. I blocked the number and called Melissa. She suggested stepping away from social media, changing my number, and staying somewhere safe for a while. I agreed. I called my assistant and told her I'd be working remotely for the next 2 weeks, then packed another bag. Before I could leave, my doorman called again. He said a young woman was downstairs asking for me, and she had a small child with her. She claimed to be my sister-in-law. I felt trapped. They just wouldn't stop. I told him to send her up. I decided I couldn't keep running. The woman at my door looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, a sleeping toddler resting on her shoulder. "I'm Jenny," she said softly. "Michael's wife. I wanted to talk to you without all the family chaos." I hesitated, then let her in. Offered her water. She accepted like she hadn't had a moment to breathe in weeks. She gently laid her daughter on my couch and covered her with a blanket. Then she sat at my kitchen table and told me the truth. "I only learned about you 3 years ago," she said. "Michael told me you left at 17 and cut contact. It never quite made sense, but I didn't push." She said hearing my podcast changed everything. She confronted Michael, and that's when he finally admitted what really happened. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she said. "But what they did to you is horrifying." She explained that she'd encouraged Michael to reach out, but she had no idea my parents were asking me for money. "I'm angry about that," she said. "Yes, I need surgery for a thyroid condition, but we have insurance. Your parents are the ones struggling financially, not us." I asked why she'd come. She looked me straight in the eye. "Because you deserve the truth." She told me my parents had spent years telling people I abandoned the family, that I was unstable, that I stole from them before disappearing, that they searched endlessly for me. None of it was true. She showed me proof, old social media posts. My mom asking for prayers to find her troubled daughter. My dad claiming I drained their savings. Posts about private investigators and shelters, all written years after they left me behind. Carefully crafted stories that painted them as victims. Jenny apologized for believing it, even unknowingly. She said she confronted my parents, and they finally admitted everything. Only after she threatened to expose the truth. "They're desperate now," she said. "Your podcast made people ask questions they can't answer." Her daughter woke up then, a little girl with curly hair. "This is Lily," she said quietly. "She's 3, and I'm pregnant again." She paused. "I want my kids to know their aunt. Only if you want that too. No pressure. No guilt." After they left, I sat alone for hours. Then I called Melissa and told her everything. She wasn't surprised. "People like this control the narrative," she said. "They rewrite reality to protect themselves." That night, I got another email from my dad. This one wasn't emotional. It was threatening. He accused me of lying publicly, claimed they'd sue me for defamation, said they had proof I stole from them, demanded I take down the podcast, issue a public apology, and compensate them financially. I forwarded it to Melissa, then to my lawyer, Marcus. He called immediately. "This is an empty threat," he said. "Truth is a full defense. Save everything. Don't respond." The next day, Michael called. I let it go to voicemail. He sounded frantic. He said Jenny had visited me, that our parents were furious, that they were now attacking her too. He begged me to call him back, on Jenny's phone. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Marcus suggested we meet, public place, with him present. I agreed. We met at a restaurant near his office. Michael and Jenny arrived looking worn down. Jenny had a bruise on her arm she tried to hide. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Marcus introduced himself as my attorney. Michael visibly flinched. Then they told the whole story. My parents had been financially dependent on Michael for years, living in his home, taking money, undermining him while controlling every part of his life. When Jenny confronted them about me, my dad grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks. Michael kicked them out immediately. Now they were staying in a motel, calling nonstop, showing up at his job. I listened as my brother broke down, describing years of manipulation, guilt, and fear. How they convinced him I abandoned them. How he was afraid to question their version of reality. Marcus asked careful questions about finances, property, and access. My parents were still on Michael's bank accounts, on his mortgage. They had house keys, passwords, control. By the end, I felt exhausted, but finally clear. This wasn't just my story anymore. Michael and Jenny were victims too. Not in the same way, but trapped all the same. Marcus advised them to get legal counsel of their own. He handed them a colleague's card and told them to immediately change their locks, passwords, and bank access. They nodded, clearly overwhelmed but thankful. As we were leaving, Michael hugged me. This time I hugged him back. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. An understanding that we'd both been harmed by the same people. That maybe healing didn't have to happen alone. That night, my phone lit up with message after message from my parents' numbers. Accusations, threats, emotional manipulation. I blocked them all. Then I called Jenny to make sure they were safe. She said yes, they'd changed the locks, stayed with friends, and were looking into a restraining order. I felt relieved, but uneasy. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Jenny, panicked and crying. They broke into our house, she said. They'd taken baby photos, important paperwork, and Michael's laptop. They left a note that read, "Family matters should stay in the family." I told her to call the police immediately. Said I'd meet them there. I called Marcus on the way. When I arrived, a police car was parked outside. Inside, drawers were open, paper scattered everywhere. Michael sat on the couch, head in his hands. Jenny was pointing out missing items to an officer. I introduced myself as family. The officer seemed unsure. He asked if maybe they'd used a spare key. Suggested it could be a misunderstanding. Jenny showed him the bruises on her arm. Told him about the threats, the stalking, the escalation. He took notes but seemed skeptical. Said it would be hard to prove who was responsible without clear evidence. After the officers left, we cleaned up together. Found more missing items, documents, photo albums, even a spare car key. Michael looked broken. He blamed himself. Said he should have protected his family sooner. Should have questioned things years ago. Should have looked harder for me. I didn't argue. But I didn't add to his guilt either. That wasn't the point anymore. Marcus arrived shortly after. Surveyed the damage and said this changed everything. Breaking and entering was serious. We needed to document every detail. He advised all of us to stay somewhere else for a few days and said he'd help file emergency restraining orders first thing in the morning. No one objected. We were exhausted. Jenny packed while Michael and I checked windows, changed locks again, and talked about security cameras. It felt unreal, taking these precautions against our own parents. But it was necessary. A line had been crossed. As we were leaving, Michael received a text from our dad. Just 3 words. "We're watching you." I took a screenshot and sent it to Marcus. Then I made a decision. I told them they were coming to stay with me. My building had security cameras and a doorman who already knew not to let my parents in. They accepted without hesitation. That night, the 4 of us ate takeout in my living room. Lily played with her toys. We spoke quietly about restraining orders, police reports, and long-term safety. It wasn't the family moment I'd ever imagined. Sitting with the brother who hadn't protected me, his wife who'd been misled, their child caught in the middle. But it felt honest, like we were finally facing reality together. The next morning, Marcus called. Emergency restraining orders had been filed for all of us. Court was scheduled for the following week. A detective had also been assigned to the break-in. He advised us to stay together for now. I agreed. I told my assistant I'd be working from home indefinitely due to a family emergency. She rearranged everything without question. Michael set up a workspace in my guest room. Jenny and Lily took over the living room, building pillow forts and watching cartoons. It was strange sharing my space. I'd lived alone for years. Loved the quiet, the order. But there was comfort in the noise, too. Lily's laughter. Jenny humming while folding laundry. Michael typing nearby. It felt like family. Not the one that abandoned me, but the one we might be building. That afternoon, my doorman called. A flower delivery had arrived. I asked him to read the card first. "We know where you all are. This isn't over." I told him to refuse the delivery and call authorities if needed. Marcus added it to our case file. He said it strengthened our position. I didn't tell Michael or Jenny. They were under enough strain. Instead, I cooked dinner, played with Lily, tried to create a sense of normalcy. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone in my kitchen and let it all hit me. The fear, the anger, the grief, and the fragile hope. I cried quietly, so no one would hear. The next morning, Jenny found me making coffee. Asked if I was okay. I said yes. She didn't believe me. "It's okay not to be okay, Emma," she said gently. "I'm not either." She told me Michael cries in the shower, that Lily keeps asking when they can go home, that everything feels overwhelming. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone carrying it. But I'm grateful we're facing it together. I looked at her, this woman I barely knew, who had somehow become part of my life. I asked why she came to me that first day. Why she chose to believe me instead of the version of the story she'd been told for years. She gave a sad smile. I always felt something wasn't right, she said. The way your parents talked. The way they controlled Michael. The stories never fully added up. She said the podcast confirmed what she'd long suspected. And more than anything, she couldn't let her daughters grow up believing that abandoning a child was ever acceptable. We hugged then. For the first time. It was awkward but real. Not friendship. Not yet. But understanding. Solidarity. A shared commitment to break a cycle that had harmed all of us. The next few days settled into a strange routine. Working. Cooking. Playing with Lily. Checking in with Marcus. Jumping at unexpected sounds. Tensing when phones rang. We were safe, but not calm. Together, but still healing. A family, still learning what that meant. On Friday, Marcus called with an update. The detective had found evidence. Security footage from a gas station near Michael's house showed our parents' car there around the time of the break-in. The restraining order hearing was set for Monday. Marcus felt confident. We were relieved, but still uneasy. That night, the tension spiked again. Someone smashed Michael's car window in the parking garage. No message. No explanation. There didn't need to be one. Security footage showed a man wearing a baseball cap, his face deliberately turned away from the cameras. We couldn't prove it was our dad, but we all knew. Another police report. More documentation. Another reminder to shield Lily from our fear. Sunday night, we sat together preparing for court. What to wear. What to say. What evidence to bring. How to explain years of manipulation without sounding unbelievable. How to show a clear pattern of escalation. How to protect ourselves. It felt surreal, discussing our parents as if they were dangerous strangers. People tied to us by blood, but not by care. Then my phone buzzed. An email from my mom. Subject line, last chance. I almost deleted it, but I opened it. One sentence. If you go to court tomorrow, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Marcus took a screenshot and added it to the file. Told me not to respond. Said threats like that only strengthened our case. That night, none of us slept much. I kept checking the locks, listening, wondering what would happen next, wondering if we were doing too much or not enough. Monday morning arrived quietly. We dressed carefully, neutral, professional, respectable. Jenny arranged childcare for Lily. We drove separately, just in case. Met Marcus outside the courthouse. He was calm, confident, told us the evidence was strong, that judges take threats seriously. As we walked in, I saw them. My parents stood near the entrance, older than I remembered, smaller somehow. My mom noticed me and started forward. My dad stopped her. They didn't speak, just watched us pass, faces tight with anger and something else. Fear, maybe. Inside the courtroom, we sat together. I felt their presence behind us but didn't turn around. When our case was called, we stood. Marcus presented everything clearly. The break-in, the threats, the messages, the flowers, the vandalism, the long history of abandonment and control. The judge listened closely, asked questions, studied our parents' reactions. When it was their turn, they approached without a lawyer. My dad spoke, insisting we were exaggerating, that they just wanted reconciliation, that this was all a misunderstanding. The judge asked about the footage, the messages, the threats. My dad denied everything, claimed they were the real victims. Then the judge asked directly about leaving me behind at 17. My dad hesitated, talked around it. Financial stress, difficult decisions. The judge interrupted. Did you leave your minor child alone and move to another state? Silence. My dad looked down and muttered something about hardship. The judge's expression changed. After reviewing everything, the judge granted the restraining orders. 3 years. No contact. No approaching our homes or workplaces. No messages, direct or indirect. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. My parents stood there, stunned, as if consequences were something that only happened to other people. As we left the courtroom, my mother called my name. Just once. Quietly. I didn't turn around. I kept walking, feeling lighter with every step. Not healed. Not yet. But moving in that direction. For the first time, a real boundary existed, one that carried real consequences. Outside, Marcus shook each of our hands. He told us we'd done well, said the orders were strong and enforceable. He reminded us to contact him immediately if there were any violations. Said he was proud of us for standing up for ourselves. We thanked him, still a little stunned, relieved in the way people are after surviving something overwhelming, blinking in the daylight, unsure what comes next. Michael hugged me on the courthouse steps. This time, it felt genuine. "I'm sorry, Emma," he said, his voice cracking. "For everything. For not protecting you back then. For believing them. For bringing this chaos back into your life." I hugged him back and told him we would be okay. That we had each other now. That we could build something better. As we walked toward our cars, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. When I did, my stomach dropped. It was a photo of Lily, playing in a backyard, completely unaware she was being watched. Beneath it were 4 words. "This isn't over yet." I showed Michael immediately. The color drained from his face. He called Jenny, who was already on her way to pick up Lily, and told her to meet us at my apartment. I called Marcus from the car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. He told me to forward the message and head straight home. Said this was a serious violation and that he'd contact the police and meet us there. The drive felt endless. I kept checking my mirrors, convinced we were being followed. When I finally parked, I sat in the car for a moment just breathing, trying to steady myself before facing everyone else. They needed me grounded. Inside, Jenny was holding Lily tightly, as if she might vanish. Lily looked confused and scared. Michael paced the room, running his hands through his hair. I showed them the message. Jenny broke down, saying she couldn't believe someone had been watching her child. Michael wrapped his arms around them both, looking more determined than I'd ever seen him. Marcus arrived shortly after with 2 officers. They took statements, reviewed the message, made calls. Said patrols would check the area and try to trace the number. They did everything by the book, but I could tell they didn't fully understand how unpredictable my parents could be. After they left, we sat in the living room discussing options. Jenny suggested a hotel. Michael talked about leaving the state temporarily. I just sat there, growing angrier by the second. We had done everything right. Followed the law. Got protection. And still, they were controlling our lives through fear. "I'm done running," I said. "Done hiding. They already took my childhood. I'm not letting them take my future too." Michael stared at me. "What are you planning to do?" I didn't have a full answer. I only knew we couldn't keep living like this. That night, we took turns staying awake. During my shift, I sat by the window with the lights off, watching the street. Around 2 a.m., I saw a car I recognized, my father's old Buick. It circled the block several times before parking across the street. I took photos, then woke Michael. We watched as he sat there, staring up at my building. Not approaching, not crossing the line, just reminding us he was there. In the morning, Marcus said it was troubling but not technically a violation. He told us to keep documenting everything. It was frustrating. Legal protections had limits. Jenny and Michael decided to take Lily to a secure hotel for a few days. I helped them pack, hugged them goodbye, and promised to check in constantly. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling strangely calm. Like I'd reached a turning point. I called Melissa and told her everything. After listening, she asked a question that stopped me cold. "What do you actually want from your parents?" Not what I feared, not what I wanted to avoid. What I wanted. After the call, I made a list. To live without fear. To have a relationship with my brother and his family. To stop carrying responsibility for my parents' actions. To be free from the past. Reconciliation wasn't on that list. Neither was forgiveness. I just wanted freedom. That afternoon, I sent my parents a short email. I told them I knew they were watching. That I knew this wouldn't stop. Then I asked to meet, one last time. Tomorrow. Noon. The coffee shop on 8th Street. Just me. No lawyers. No police. After that, they leave us alone for good. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. I didn't tell anyone. This was something I had to do for myself. Not because I believed they'd change, but because I needed to face them on my terms, and finally end the cycle. My dad replied within minutes. Just 3 words. "We'll be there." No accusations. No manipulation. Just confirmation. I spent the rest of the day preparing, not physically, but mentally. I thought about what I needed to say. What mattered? What didn't? What lines could never be crossed again? That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Making the decision had lifted something heavy off my chest. The next morning, I dressed carefully, not to impress them, but to remind myself who I was. Steady, capable, in control. I took an Uber to the coffee shop and arrived early. Chose a table in the back corner where I could see the entrance without being seen from outside. Ordered a coffee I barely touched, and waited. They arrived exactly at noon. They looked smaller somehow, older, worn down by consequences they never thought would come. My mom noticed me first, touched my dad's arm. They approached slowly and sat across from me without a word. For a moment, none of us spoke. These people, who were supposed to be my parents, felt like strangers. I broke the silence. I didn't ask you here to reconcile, or to hear excuses, or to fix anything. They stiffened. I asked you here to be clear. I looked directly at them. This ends now. You don't get access to my life anymore. Or Michael's. Or his family. My dad opened his mouth. I raised my hand. I'm not finished. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. The messages, the photos, the emails, the surveillance. Everything has been documented. I leaned forward slightly. If you contact any of us again, directly or indirectly, there will be consequences you won't be able to talk your way out of. My mother started crying. We just want our family back, she said. We made mistakes, but we deserve another chance. We're getting older. We don't want to be alone. I held her gaze. You should have thought about that when you left your 17-year-old daughter behind. She flinched. When you lied about it. When you broke into your son's home. When you frightened your grandchild. My dad's face hardened. You've always been difficult, he snapped. Ungrateful. You turned your brother against us. You owe us for everything we did for you. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. You think you're owed something for doing the bare minimum for part of my childhood? I shook my head. You didn't raise me into adulthood. You abandoned me. And you don't get lifelong credit for years you chose to walk away from. They sat there in stunned silence. I stood. This is the last conversation we will ever have. Respect that, or face the consequences of not respecting it. Then I walked out. I didn't look back. And for the first time since I was 17, I didn't feel chased by the past. I felt free. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. For the first time since I was 17, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The past had tried to follow me, but now I had set a boundary that could never be crossed. In the weeks that followed, the restraining orders held. My parents tried a few last desperate attempts, emails, calls, even showing up near the building, but every time, Marcus and the police were ready. They couldn't manipulate the system anymore, and they couldn't manipulate me. Michael, Jenny, Lily, and I finally started to breathe. Our home felt safe. For the first time in years, I could focus on my life, my work, and the family I had chosen, those who truly loved and supported me. Healing was slow, and I still carried the scars of abandonment, but I was no longer running from the past. I was building a life on my own terms. Looking back, I realized something important. Survival wasn't enough. I needed to reclaim my life. And that meant protecting the people I loved and never letting anyone, no matter who they claimed to be, control my story again. If you've ever experienced betrayal, abandonment, or heartbreak within your own family, know this: you are not alone. Healing is possible. Boundaries are powerful. And your story is yours to tell. If you want to hear more emotionally intense stories of infidelity, betrayal, and heartbreak, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Suggested Reads. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, because every story deserves to be heard, and some truths are more shocking than you could ever imagine.